Welcome to the program. I'm Okbayemi Owosheni. We begin with a significant development from the National Assembly. As more than 6 decades after it was first enacted, the Nigerian Senate has commenced the process of repealing and reenacting the Ministry of Finance Incorporated Act, a move aimed at overhauling how the nation's public assets are managed. The new legislation, Ministry of Finance Incorporated Act of 2025, sponsored by the Senator representing Niger East, Sani Musa, seeks to reposition MOFI as a commercially driven, performance-oriented institution. The goal to align Nigeria's oversight management practices with international standard. MOFI was established in 1959, responsible for managing the Nigerian government's equity investment in various enterprises. Senator Musa, who also chairs the Senate Committee on Finance, says the bill will usher in an era of efficiency and accountability. And consumer confidence in the United States improved significantly in May 2025. That's following a truce in the ongoing trade war between Washington and Beijing. Now, this marks a positive turn after 5 consecutive months of declining sentiment. The Conference Board, a global economic research group, reported on the 27th of May that its consumer confidence index rose by 12.3 points to reach 98.0% in May 2025. Now, this figure exceeded economic expectations, who had predicted a more modest increase to 87.0%. About half of the survey responses were collected after May 12th, when the White House announced a temporary deal to reduce tariffs on Chinese import from 145% to 30% for 90 days. We'll go on a break now and be back with company news. Welcome back. E-hailing drivers under the Lagos State-backed large ride platform have raised serious concerns. Now, in a strongly worded statement, the Amalgamated Union of App-Based Transporters of Nigeria accused the platform managing companies of persistent failures and exploitative practices. The union's PRO, Stephen Imidoye, said many drivers referred to as captains struggle to get ride requests, especially outside Lagos Highland and the city center. Areas like Ikorodu, Badagry, Igondo, Abulo-Egba, and Alagbado reportedly suffer from low demand even during peak hours. The drivers blame the problem on poor app functionality, a lack of market research, and minimal advertisement. And in Abuja, the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund has announced a new collaboration with the National Identity Management Commission. The aim is to integrate data from the Employees' Compensation Scheme into the National Identity Database. A move officials say will improve efficiency, transparency, and security in processing workplace injury claims. The managing director of the NSITF, Oluwaseun Faleye, emphasized that linking employee biodata to their national identity numbers will allow for faster and more accurate validation. We'll take a breather here, but when Money Matters return, we'll be discussing the Nigerian government saying it would not invest in establishing a national carrier for the country. I'll bring you more details after this break. Welcome back. The Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, has declared that the Nigerian government is not going to invest any funds in establishing a national carrier for the country. Keyamo said the government would rather focus on creating a policy-driven environment that empowers local airlines to thrive, rather than pursuing a government-funded national airline. Now, this statement follows his earlier comment where he confirmed a strategic shift in aviation policy to strengthen domestic airlines amid widespread calls for a national carrier. According to Keyamo, the current administration is prioritizing reforms aimed at supporting local operators. Keyamo further clarified that while the Nigerian government will not invest in a national carrier, it remains open to proposals from public or private investors, both Nigerian and foreign, interested in establishing one. He cited recent policies that have enabled airlines to access aircraft for their operations, including the revised insurance regulations on leased aircraft. Now, this move aims to make aircraft more accessible and also reduce airfares in Nigeria.
We should realize that in the whole of Africa, like she said, that has been my sing-song. Nigeria is unique. Nigeria is very unique. It's only in Nigeria and Africa you have a wholly private sector-driven industry right now. And you have a private sector-driven industry, your policies must shift. As the dynamics change, government policy must change to meet the dynamics. And I said, if we are not running a national airline now, even the ones we want to run are pseudo-national airlines because it is just our franchise we are selling if we have to. Government is not funding, cannot fund, and will not fund any national airline. So if you go and pay anything and bring it there and say national airline, in street sense it's not a national airline. No matter what you paint or it's not. It's not. Because it's not funded by government. So it's not a national airline. What you are selling is the franchise, is the traffic and our buses. Because the national airline gets the first right over those routes before the airline. That's what you are selling. Right? So we cannot really have it. But it's only in Nigeria. Other African countries, from Rwanda Air to Egypt Air to Moroccan Air to South African Air to Ugandan Airlines, to all of them are funded or subsidized by governments. So if that is the case, then government must also change its policies in line with the changing dynamics. And that is why I told this player, I said, look, one of our focus, which no minister had adopted before, was that we must deliberately craft policies in support of local airlines for their growth and development. That is an attempt for the agenda, that the growth and development. And that was why I rolled up my sleeves and I said, I called all of them, what is your problem? Access to aircraft. I went to the board, what is the problem in Nigeria? No confidence in your system. Why? Our equipment are not safe within your jurisdiction. I dug down deep. Got to the Cape Town Convention, went to the Chief Justice of Nigeria, went to the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, went to the Attorney General of the Federation. They came into my trap, that's my field. They walked into my trap, saying, so it is law that is your problem. I will solve the problem for you if it is law. And so we crafted the practice directions, signed by the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, and the world was happy with us.
The National Carrier Initiative, which began under the previous administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, has faced widespread criticism and allegations of fraud. Although Keyamo, backed by a decisive court ruling, closed the chapter on the controversial National Carrier project in 2024, the conversation around its necessity continues. The previous government of the country was set to launch the Nigeria Air project with Ethiopian Airlines chosen as a technical partner of the project. But the new government has now chosen to abandon the project altogether after initially suspending it. So what does this mean for Nigeria's aviation sector? To help us unpack the implications of this decision, we are joined now by the CEO of Mainstream Cargo Limited, Mr. Seyi Adewale. Now, thank you for joining me on the program. Now, what do you make about the Nigerian government's decision to discontinue the Nigeria Air project?
It's a good development, noting the present-day challenges of Nigeria as a nation, knowing that there are so many important things that to be distracted with these, if I can use the word humongous project, because it will take a lot to start off an airline at this time.
Now, Mr. Seyi, you would agree with me that this Nigeria project has been coming on from a very long time, since 2018. Now, in your opinion, do you think the Nigeria Air project was ever a viable one, or was it doomed from the beginning?
No, not at this time. And I say this. There are so many fundamental things that we need to have before we can go with such initiative. If you remember, when we had Nigerian Airways, we had so many support structures that guarded or that supported Nigerian Airways at the outset. So, but all those support structures are gone now. And how simply I can say it is that if you look at nations who have a national carrier within Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, uh, and related countries like Niger, I think so, you will discover that they have all those fundamental structures, foundational structures that can support um, an airline. You know, one of it being a solid MRO facility that is modern, that can overhaul, do maintenance for today's kind of aircraft. If you notice now, many of the aircraft that are being used now, the older ones are gone. Let's use maybe Dana Air, for example. You see all their MD aircrafts have been grounded. They don't really function anymore. So we need aircraft that are modern, and you have to have the support structure to be able to uh, manage such. And if you don't have those support structures, most of the income or inflows revenue that you make will be shipped outside to go and do all this repair, return, and such like. Secondly, we don't have any strong logistic warehousing of aircraft parts in Nigeria. You know, in England, for example, you have where companies, institutions that warehouse aircraft spare parts. Likewise in Dubai, likewise in the US, they are like agents for all these spare parts. We don't have any such in Nigeria, you know, so that is another challenge. So there are many challenges as in that we have as of now to be able to say we want to start a Nigeria Air or National Carrier project. So it will distract the government significantly, and also it is the sunk cost needed to start such is rather high.
Now, do you think the government's shift to supporting local carriers instead is a better strategy for Nigeria's aviation industry?
For now, yes, I strongly believe so. For now, yes, because now domestic carriers can manage regional flights to a reasonable extent, whereas 2 3 hour flights they can manage it as of today. And you also notice that they are buying modern aircraft, so which are fuel efficient. So that is also good. So the government should encourage them. And over time, as we grow and nurture, we grow and support these airlines, we will discover that they'll be able to gradually be able to do long haul flights.
Now, let's talk about the implications of this for Nigeria's aviation sector. How do you think this would impact the sector, especially in terms of connectivity, competition, and also affordability?
You know, since government is not having its own national carrier, so the next best alternative, the next best alternative is to have, um, the next best alternative is to support the domestic airlines so that they can begin to run, you know, at this stage, then begin to fly in terms of, in a manner of speaking. So if government supports them, they have all the support, like the Minister of Aviation is actually doing, trying to support them. They'll be able to grow, run, and then fly at the end.
All right, one of the things the Minister of Aviation mentioned, Dazam Keyamo, was the revised insurance regulations on leased aircraft. Now, I would like to know how important is this new change for local airlines?
Okay, it's very important because there are so many factors that surround why our airlines are not getting good contracts. They have very expensive contracts and they're very weary to invest in Nigeria. But based on the new policy, including this insurance policy that you're saying, it encourages or endears these investors to Nigeria so that they know that they have the support of government, they have the backing of government, especially when they have issues with the domestic airlines. So they don't have problems repatriating their aircraft back. They don't. And it also puts the domestic airlines to be very responsive to the needs of the investor too as well. And then it also lowers the insurance premium paid by the airlines too as well. So these are very good initiatives because so many of these unseen costs actually are part of the things that make the airfare either high or also make the investors weary to invest in Nigeria. And then also when they do, the premiums are very high, so, but this lowers the cost at the end of the day.
What would you say are the biggest challenges local airlines currently face, and how do you think the government can use policy to realistically reduce and also address them?
Okay, like based the honorable Honorable Minister Kayamo has started on a good footing, whereby the great issues in terms of leasing, because most airlines don't buy outrightly, most, except those that are usually supported by government, so they lease. So if our airlines or domestic investors can easily enter into a leasing contract to have aircraft, that really helps. So that is the start point. The other point is that I don't know if government can invest in training institution. INCAT, for example, can be reinvested. The government can deploy a lot of investment to have modern training facilities whereby they can train more on modern planes. That is also another thing that we need to do. MRO is very, very critical. I know some state governments are trying to invest. I also know Embraer, they're trying to invest in Nigeria. So we can encourage these MRO, these foreign airlines or aircraft building companies to set up MRO in Nigeria. That will really, really help. And if government can do everything, all things possible to be able to set up a modern MRO facility that can handle large planes, that will be very, very good.
Well, you've mentioned now that it's a good move that the government has decided to abandon this project. But then, do you think there are any risk in completely abandoning the national carrier concept? Or can a strong private sector fill the gap?
Yes, strong private sector can definitely fill in the gap if they have the right required resources in terms of financing, maybe from the banks. If the government gives them an enabling environment, for example, they continue with the 0% duty for aircraft parts, even widen the scope to allow more aircraft part shipments, aircraft raw materials to be able to be on zero duty and 0% VAT exempted or exemption. So that also helps a lot. And then also some of the charges, the tariffs, can be revised downwards instead of upwards. For example, we know that NAMA the other day said they want to increase by a significant percentage, and it was later uh, stopped. That also helps because those charges are kind of high. The margins of the airlines are very small. So anything to support them to make sure that they are cost effective and that governments, you know, partner with the airline, AON, Airline Organization of Nigeria, the Association of the Airlines, that they can collaborate and keep listening to them for where they need support and help because they'll get the direct need, the direct request from them. So I encourage government to liaise with AON regarding how they can support them directly from the airline owners, so to speak.
Well, just before I let you go, sir, what key lessons do you think the Nigerian government and industry stakeholders as well should take away from the Nigeria experience moving forward?
Okay, first is that we have to be patriotic. We have to be patriotic in every decision we want to make on behalf or commitment we want to make on Nigeria on behalf of the citizens of the country. So we have to be patriotic. If that patriotism is there, it will really help. Secondly, is that we have to be realistic in our assessment of. It's not just saying that Nigeria is a giant of the nation. Do we have competitive advantage to play as a nation in this particular field? So we have to be realistic. Then thirdly, if we want to do such feat, we should have what we call a long-term plan. It's not something that you can say 6 months, 1 year, we want to have a national carrier. We need to work with consultants and have a robust plan that, okay, this is what A needs to be done, B needs to be done, C needs to be done, till finally we get to where we were going to, where we want to be. So, but the easier part is to support the domestic airlines to fill in that gap. Most of the airlines today, even governments are taking themselves away from owning airlines. You know, most of the, I mean, like BA, for example, is owned by AIG Group, for example. So most of them are tending, they still bear the name British Airways, but they are managed by AIG Group, which are more or less investors. So governments in most nations are trying to pull away from owning airlines and allowing more private sector participation in owning, controlling, and managing those airlines. We see continually that most of these new, government states that still own aircraft are having many strong issues in managing those aircraft, like Kenya Airways, for example. They have issues managing it. South Africa, too, they still have issues managing their airlines. So, but we see that in developed world, most of them are trying to move away from the state owning an airline, so to speak, or being running a national carrier. So the flag carrier model seems to be the way to go.
Well, the CEO of Mainstream Cargo Limited, Seyi Adewale, many thanks for lending your thoughts on the program. And that's it for this episode of the program. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Okpeyemi Owosheni. See you next time.